Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My sincere apologies for the slight delay in starting. We had a bit of a network issue from our end, which resulted in this delay. Thank you so much for staying around, and we'll be getting started right away. My name is Siddharth, and I'm from the ManageEngine's IT Security Solutions team, and I'll be your host and presenter for today's session. So I just want to get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way before we get started. Firstly, we will be sending you a recording of today's session via email within a day or two, and we'll also be giving you some more material for the GDPR, some guides and other technical material of that sort. And the other thing that I want to let you know is that we're available on the live chat throughout this webinar. So at any point in time, whether you have a technical issue with the webinar or you want to discuss about a particular topic in more detail, do reach out to us on the live chat, because we've got two of our product experts, Mahidhar and Sharada, and they are here to answer questions on the live chat, right? So over the course of the presentation, do stop us at any point if you'd like to discuss something in more detail, and shoot out your questions on the live chat, right? So once again, my sincere apologies for the 5-minute delay. It was due to unavoidable circumstances back here in our office. So I hope that's not a problem, and we can get started with today's session. Right, so this is the agenda for today's session. We're in essence essentially going to be concerned about two important articles of the GDPR for security professionals, right? Especially for security teams and security administrators and CIOs. We have two specific articles that we want to focus on of the GDPR in today's session. And we're going to be looking at how one of our most favorite security technologies, how our SIEM solutions are going to play a role in meeting these requirements, right, of Articles 32 and 33. So we look at what these articles are, 32 and 33, and we also have a look at what a SIEM solution is going to do in helping meet Articles 32 and 33, right? So we'll essentially look at getting a few things, we look at getting started on getting a few things in place in our IT environment, starting from being able to review security events on a daily basis, right? So we have a look at how we can do that. We look at how we can achieve integrity of data in our files and databases, right? So we'll have a look at that side of security information and event management as well. We look at setting up security alerts, right? So this is going to be important, and you'll see why this is going to be important, especially for GDPR article number 33, right? So we're going to be looking at setting up these security alerts, and we'll also have a look at what you need to do in case you get a data breach, right? In case you get a data breach, we'll have a look at what you need to be doing in order to comply with the GDPR, right? Because the GDPR has some specific requirements in case you have a personal data breach in your organization, right? So we'll have a look at that as well. Some of you might be aware of some of these requirements. Some of you might be in process of getting more details about some of these GDPR articles. So we'll start right from the beginning and have a look at what exactly Articles 32 and 33 talk about, right? So Article number 32. So this is a crucial aspect for the GDPR, and I've just taken a couple of texts from Article 32, which in a sense is what you're expected to do, right? So this is during the processing of data. This is once you've collected the data and you're processing it through your network and storing it in a particular server. This is what you need to ensure, right? The ongoing confidentiality, integrity, availability, and resilience of processing systems and services, right? So there's going to be a bunch of systems and services involved with the data processing, obviously, right? So you have to ensure that in these processes, during the processing of data, you have to ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability and resilience is maintained, right? Now, when it comes to availability, when it comes to resilience and availability, one aspect of things is backup, right? So this is one of the aspects. You have to ensure you need to have a backup of your data so that in case there is some loss, you're able to restore data from a backup. But we're not going to get into that side of the requirements today. We're going to focus on ensuring this confidentiality, the integrity, right? Integrity essentially means that if you've collected a piece of data, that it's not tampered with, right? So for example, if you've taken my data, my personal data, right, my name and my address and date of birth and things like that, if you've collected this data, you have to ensure that over the course of processing, these values of these different fields don't change, right? So which is to say that my name, Siddharth, should not be changed to Mahidar, for example, right? So you have to, this is data integrity. You have to ensure that. Confidentiality, of course, refers to ensuring that only the right people are accessing and modifying data. So if, for example, you've collected personal data of an individual, some random person in your organization shouldn't be accessing and viewing that data, right? So that's pretty straightforward in terms of what you want to be achieving, right, in that first quote. And in the second quote, you see you want to prevent the accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure, or access to personal data, right? So this again is building on what we've already seen. Confidentiality, integrity. You basically want to ensure that the people who are accessing your data and people who are performing operations on your data are the authorized individuals, right? So the GDPR explicitly states that you should not have the unlawful destruction or loss of data, right? So if what this essentially means, to sum this up, Article 32 essentially is saying, make sure that once you've collected data, personal data, make sure that no one who's unauthorized is even looking at it, and also make sure that the integrity of data is maintained throughout the processing of data, right? So this is two very important takeaways from Article 32, because here is where security teams and security professionals come into the picture to actually implement measures to ensure this in their organization. Right, so here's where you want to start implementing security policies and defining a security baseline in your organization. And a lot of people here talk about different things like have a risk-based approach to data and things like that, right? But in a sense, what you want to be achieving from for Article 32 is you want to ensure the confidentiality and integrity, and you want to ensure that accesses and modifications are authorized and there is no unauthorized disclosure. Right, so this is article number 32. We're going to be looking at, I wanted to talk about and show you the actual text from the GDPR, because this is a good way to start understanding the requirements and a good way to start evaluating and implementing security policies to meet the requirements of any compliance regulation. Right, so this is article number 32. So let's keep that in mind. Let's look at article number 33, and this is one of the more popular articles of the GDPR, right, which has got a lot of security teams talking, because the GDPR has now brought in the whole mandatory breach reporting aspect, right, to data security, which essentially says, you can see again, this is all taken right out of the GDPR official text, and it says that in the case of a personal data breach, the data controller shall, without undue delay and where feasible, not later than 72 hours after having becoming aware of it, notify the personal data breach. Right, so pretty convoluted text in case you're not used to reading law documents and things like that. But essentially, what they're saying here is, if you get notified of a data breach, you have to notify the authorities within 72 hours. Right, so within 72 hours of the data breach, you actually have to report the breach to the authorities. Right, so this is again explicitly stated in the GDPR, and I know there's a lot of text and lingo in the GDPR which people are saying, okay, it's sort of like gray area. We're still not too sure how this is actually going to pan out in terms of GDPR audits, and I agree with you on that. Right, it's going to take 1 or 2 GDPR audits before organizations start to understand exactly what is required and start to build a more standardized data security program in their organization. Yes, I agree with that. But this Article 33, just like 32, is very explicit in what it says. It's clearly saying that if you have a data breach in your organization, you have to report the breach within 72 hours to the authorities. Right? So you're also expected to document these personal data breaches, note down the facts related to the personal data breach, If we look at that over the course of the webinar, we look at exactly what kind of details you need to know in case you have a breach. So you need to know you need to report all of these things, the effects of the breach, the remedial action taken. You have to report all of these to the authorities. So it's not just a matter of saying, hey, I've been breached, but it's a matter of saying, hey, there was a personal data breach in my organization. Here is when it happened. Here are the events that happened that led to the data breach. Here's the exact effect of the breach. Here are the people who are affected. Here's the action that we've taken. So it has to be a very comprehensive incident report and not just a notification in terms of an FYI, right? So this is again a very explicit requirement, and I can't keep reiterating this because this is something that you can directly be audited for, and you might have to pay the fines in case you are not doing this breach reporting, right? So this is very crucial to know Article 32 and 33, and we're going to be looking at what measures we can use with a SIEM solution in order to meet these requirements, right? So here's why security auditing as a concept is going to be all the more important with the advent of the GDPR, right? So because keep thinking about Articles 32 and 33, right? So with security auditing using a SIEM solution, you'll essentially be able to monitor important security events, right? Such as accesses and modifications made to data. Now relate this directly back to Article 32, which wants you to ensure authorized access, which wants you to ensure integrity of data. So this is where tracking, this kind of tracking mechanism and auditing in your environment is going to make a huge difference, right? So this is, you want to ensure that you have this monitoring in place so that you're able to meet the requirements of data integrity, meet the requirements of data confidentiality, meet the requirements of ensuring authorized access, preventing disclosure and unauthorized accesses and modifications, right? So that's one reason. And then, of course, when you look at Article 33, you want to ensure that you don't have data breaches in the first place, ideally, right? So if you don't have data breaches, then you don't have to report data breaches. And having this security auditing mechanism in your organization essentially allows you to mitigate data breaches by giving you real-time alert notifications for suspicious activity, right? So once you get these alerts, you can then go ahead and investigate into the security incident, and you're essentially able to preempt the breach, or worst case, even if the breach happens, you're able to get the alert in time to go and fix or remediate the damage and report the details to your auditors, right? So this is why security auditing is going to play an important role with Articles 32 and 33. So let's look at how we can essentially get started, right? So at this point, we know that what Article 32 and 33 is asking us to do, and we've got an idea of how security auditing, what role security auditing is going to play in meeting Articles 32 and 33, right? To ensure the whole data integrity and authorized access and things like that. So essentially, what you want to do when you get started with security auditing, right? So some of you might already be using a SIEM solution, which is great. In which case, all you need to do is go ahead in tweaking some of the configurations and running the right set of reports and alerts and things like that. Or in case you're new to security information and event management, this slide is going to be useful for you, right? Because what we are essentially going to do to practically achieve security auditing is first go and enable auditing on the different systems that store personal data, right? Not just store, but also process personal data. So what this means is that you're going to collect data at different points. Your business is going to collect personal data at different points, and then it's going to go inevitably and store them in some file server or database, right? So what essentially you need to be enabling auditing for are the systems that store personal data and the systems that process personal data, right? So for example, as the data moves through your network, it's going to be passing through, say, firewalls and the routers and switches, and eventually it's going to make its way and it's going to be stored in databases or file servers, right? So essentially, you want to have basic security auditing enabled on all of these systems. You want You want to be auditing your file servers, you want to be auditing your database servers, you want to be auditing your network devices, your firewalls, router switches, your IDS, IPS, right? So essentially, you want to be monitoring the systems that store and process personal data. So what you have to do for practically achieving this is go ahead and enable auditing, right? So auditing is for those of you who are new to this, auditing essentially is what we use to say logging, right? So essentially, systems have the capability to generate logs for different kinds of events, right? So each kind of system or each kind of device might have its own logging mechanism. So you'll essentially have to log into the administrator user interface for that system and enable auditing for the events that you want to track. Right? So for example, if some of you are more familiar with the Windows environment, you can actually go to your group policy editor and enable auditing for the specified set of events, right? So if some of you know on the group policy, you can go and enable object access auditing, right? Which essentially is going to start tracking all of the accesses made to your file objects, right, in your Windows environment. So the same idea holds good if you look at, say, your maybe your Cisco firewall. You'll have to log into your Cisco firewall admin console and enable auditing for the events that you want to track. So this is step number one. You identify all the systems that either store or process personal data, and then you go ahead and enable auditing on all of those platforms. Right. So what's going to happen then is that all of these different platforms are going to start generating logs for the specified set of events. Right. So your file server is going to start generating logs for the different accesses and modifications and deletions being made to data and things like that. And each of these different systems, your firewall is going to be generating logs, your databases, all of these machines are going to generate logs. And you want to essentially collect all of these logs into a centralized console, which is essentially what a SIEM tool does. And then what you're going to be able to do, because you've collected all of this audit information, you can schedule reports to review activity, right? So on a daily basis, you can review activity by just looking at dashboards and graphs to know if everything is normal, to know if everything's working as required. And you also know in case any anomalies are happening, right? For example, if normally you have about 100 file access events on a given day, but you suddenly notice in a daily report that there were 800 failed attempts on the previous day, right? So then you can go ahead and investigate into the incident. And again, because you've collected all of these logs, all of these different events are being tracked, and you have an audit trail of exactly what has happened. And that is fundamental to ensuring data security. That's fundamental to ensuring integrity of data, right? So we'll get to that in a bit. So apart from the reports, you're also going to be able to get alerts. So you're going to get real-time notifications when misuse happens, right? Because you're tracking all of these activities, you're getting all of these logs. Your SIEM solution can basically trigger alerts for misuse, right? So someone is trying to access something that they should not, or is trying to move some file that they should not. You can get alerts for those things, right? So this is just an overview, right? Essentially, you're enabling auditing on the platforms that store or process data, pulling in all of these logs to your SIEM solution, scheduling reports, and generating alerts. This is essentially what you're going to achieve with a SIEM solution. And this is exactly what is needed to meet requirements 32 and 33 of the GDPR. Right, so let's dive into more details about each of these things. Right, so when I said reviewing security events on a daily basis, right, on a daily basis, you want to ensure that your security team has a process in place where you're reviewing security events from the previous day. And so what this means is that you're going to have a whole bunch of things happening in your environment, whole bunch of activities relating to the accesses and modifications of data, and you want to ensure that all of these events are being tracked on a daily basis. Right? So you can, well, I just jump into our own SIEM solution, Log360, to give you an idea of what I mean. Right? So I'm actually going to jump, I don't want to give too many details about the product and make this a product demo session, but I just want to use this as an opportunity to show, to illustrate some of the things that we're talking about, right? I want to just jump into the product for that purpose. So I'm essentially just jumping to the event log analyzer module of Log360, right? So Log360 has 4 or 5 integrated tools into a single console, and these tools provide the functionality needed for real-time security information and event management, right? So I just want to jump. I'm not going to talk too much about the product. In case any of you are evaluating the product or want to know more details, do shoot out the questions on the live chat, and we'll answer those questions immediately. Right, so I've just jumped into the tool, Event Log Analyzer, which is part of ManageEngine's Log360. And here's what I mean by dashboards, right? You get these kinds of details. You can have a look at this. So we have some simulated data on the product, and you can get these kinds of trend reports, right? So this is something that you want to review on a daily basis, right? So you can just see, for example, if how the trend keeps fluctuating, and you can look at days in which there are anomalies that need to be investigated, right? So for example, if you notice that on a particular day there is some kind of abnormal behavior, you can go ahead and drill down and review the events that happened that day so that you know if there was any misuse, right? So I'm just going to just jump to the reports section. We don't have too much time to dive into the product details, but what I want to talk about really is having these reports scheduled on a daily basis so that you're able to understand what's happening in your environment. Right, so if you look at this for in your Windows environment, the product is giving you reports for all the failure events, warning, information, error, and success events. So schedule this on a daily basis. On a daily basis, go ahead and check how many failure events happen, warning events, information events, error events, and success events. Right, go ahead and track them based on the criticalities. Right, the critical levels of events, the criticality based on the events, devices, remote device, the critical events trend, right? So this is again important in detecting anomalies. So this is something that you want to be doing on a daily basis. So if you have a SIEM solution in place, you will essentially be able to get these reports presented in a neat graphical format. So your security team, all they need to do is analyze these trends by looking at these reports and dashboards, right? So this has to be part of a daily process in your security operations. This is not something that you want to schedule during the day of your audit, right? This has to be a continuous part of your security operations. And you want to ensure that you're able to run these reports on a daily basis. Specific things, right? Specific things that you want to track, general security events based on their severities and criticalities. You want to track privileged user activity, right? Your administrator activities. You want to track exactly what kinds of actions they're performing, what changes did they make yesterday, what did they access or modify because they have the most privileges. So this is something you want to track as part of your daily security operations. Track privileged user activity, check important events, logins to machines that store personal data, file accesses, failed attempts, which is very crucial because you'll see a lot of failed attempts in the case of a potential breach, right? So these are events that you want to track every day, right? These are just basic, right? If you have bigger environments and bigger requirements, you may well be doing more than this already. But I wanted to talk about these kinds of events specifically for smaller organizations who are trying to implement data security programs, right? Because it's very crucial here to have this kind of process as part of your daily security operations. Keep tracking privileged user activity, track events based on criticality, track all the logins being made to your crucial file servers, the actual accesses, the access attempts, the failed attempts, right? So all of these can be run as reports on a daily basis, and all of these can be reviewed every day, right? So that you know that, okay, yesterday everything was clear, or whether you want to go ahead and investigate something, right? So, and over time, you'll get these big trend charts and trend dashboards, which makes it easier to investigate anomalies, right? So this is one aspect. You want to do this. This is going to be crucial to ensuring the whole data integrity and confidentiality and authorized access, right? So this is one thing. And then, so when we talk more about data integrity, I'm going to show you a few crucial events that you want to be tracking in your environment, right? So essentially what you want to know when it comes to data audits are you want to stay on top of the 4 vital W's, right? So this is something you would be familiar with if you've been in security and data security and audits for a while. You'd know that you would need to know the answers for these 4 vital W's, right? The who, which, when, and what, right? Who accessed an object, which object was accessed, when the access was made, and what the modified value is, right? So knowing this essentially tells you that you know exactly who's accessing and modifying your data, and you know exactly what is being changed, right? So this is the most important thing when it comes to data integrity. And this is something that the GDPR expects. The GDPR clearly says that you need to ensure the ongoing confidentiality and integrity of personal data. And to do that, you need to know the answers to the 4 vital W's. At any point, if someone came and asked you, who changed that, right? So you should be in a position to review your reports or run your reports or check the events from that particular time frame and answer the who, which, when, and what, right? So you need to know. This is to be accountable, right? So you can't have a data modification in your personal data modification in your environment that goes untracked. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So if there's an access made to a personal data and some personal information is copied and transmitted to copy to a USB stick and transmitted outside your network, you need to know that if that happens. Right? For that, you need to actually be tracking all of the accesses and modifications being made. Right? You need to know the who, which, when, and what. Right? And to do that, here's an example of events that you have to actually track. Right? So if you look at your file servers first, this is what I want you to track. Track the accesses, track the creations of files, track the files being moved, deleted, renamed, modified, the file permission changes, the SACL changes, right, which is your audit specifications. Track all of these things. You need to know the answers to all of these questions, right? So you need to have reports in place for all the files that are being accessed. You need to know the 4 vital W's for that. All the files being created, again, know the 4 vital W's for that. The files being moved, deleted, renamed, modified, the file permissions being changed. Again, hugely crucial, because what if someone who's unauthorized is given permission to access and modify a particular file, right? So, and the SACL changes, which is the changes made to the audit specifications, right? So these are what you want to be tracking on your file servers. Again, very crucial to have the daily reports. You have to ensure that you're reviewing this on a daily basis so that you have an idea and you're tracking who is actually accessing and modifying personal data in your organization, right? So this is again something you want to do daily. Have a report for all the files that have been accessed. Know who accessed the file, when the file access happened, which file was accessed, and what, if any change, what was the change made, right? So you know the 4 vital W's for these different things. This is for your file server. Then comes your databases, right? So database activity, again, you want to know your DML, DDL changes, right? You want to know who is exactly manipulating data and schemas. You want to know if new schemas or tables or procedures are being created and deleted, right? These are things again that you want to track. The DML, DDL changes, basically the insertions made to tables, tables being updated, tables being selected, and things like that, right? So you want to track that on your databases. And then when it comes to account activity, you want to track your user creations and the database roles being assigned, right? Which is equivalent to tracking the permissions on your file server, right? So the same idea extends from your file server. What you do it on your database as well. You want to ensure file integrity. You want to ensure column integrity in the case of databases, right? So the reason why I was showing this as 2 different examples was really to tell you that you want to have this kind of tracking in place for all your systems that store personal data. Right? So when it came to your file servers, you wanted to know all the files being accessed and deleted and things like that. Comes to your database, you're looking at your tables, your columns, the selections, the insertions into tables, the accesses, column integrity monitoring, right? Just like file integrity monitoring. So you want to have reports for all of these things, again, on a daily basis, right? So server activity, in the case of a database, you don't want to just track your database application, but also the server which is hosting it, right? Because you also want to make sure that the server is secure. Because again, if you jump back to Article 32, it explicitly says, no, you're not just looking at the data as the thing you want to secure, but you're also looking at the systems and processes that store or transmit data, right? So very crucial here, your databases, file servers. But ultimately, you want to not just don't restrict to just files, folders, and databases, but look at securing data from all angles in all your platforms, right? So don't just think about on-premises. No, don't just think about data that is there in the premises of your network, right? Because you probably have cloud platforms, you probably have Office 365, right? So you want to also be auditing your Office 365 environment, because there's a whole bunch of personal data that's going to be stored and processed in your cloud as well, right? So essentially, you want to have your SIEM solution to be tracking all of these different aspects of your data security on your on-premises as well as cloud platforms, right? I gave you some examples of events that you want to track on your files and folders, on your databases, but the same idea extends to your cloud platforms as well, right? Because you really want to be ensuring this kind of data security and data integrity from all angles in both your on-premises and cloud platforms, right? So I hope at this point you're getting an idea of what kind of events you want to be looking at in your environment, right, to ensure data integrity and file integrity. And in fact, we have a question from one of our attendees. So John Newman wants to know, in case you're deploying a solution, can the same solution basically monitor everything, right? So it's a good question, and the answer to that is basically that's what a good SIEM solution can do for you, right? It can give you visibility into all of these platforms. It's not something that is just going to say, look at just your files, and then you need a different solution to monitor your databases, right? A good SIEM solution, such as ManageEngine's Log360, can actually give you the visibility into data in all your platforms, right? So into your files and folders, your databases, the data on the cloud in terms of your Office 365 environment, your Azure and AWS, all of these things matter, right? All of these things matter because the GDPR isn't something that says it's an on-premises data protection regulation, right? GDPR expects data to be protected from all angles. And you ideally want to have a SIEM solution that is able to give you the visibility and track events on all of these platforms, including your cloud, right? And ManageEngine Log360 can do that, right? So keep your questions as well coming. We've been answering a lot of questions about general data security and audit policies and things like that. So if you have those questions, I hope most of them are being answered already. But keep these questions coming because we want to keep the webinar engaging so that in addition to the material that I want to discuss on the slide deck, you're also using our in-house security and product specialists to get details about the challenges that you're trying to solve in your environment, right? So this is about reviewing security events, and this is so important, right? You want to run these reports, get these details about different activities pertaining to your data on a daily basis. And in addition to that, you also want alerts, right? So reports are more to do on a daily basis. You go ahead and schedule these reports, analyze, your security team analyzes them, ensures everything is proper, everything is authorized, there's no data exfiltration and all that. But in addition to that, you also want to set up alerts, right? So you want to set up alerts. You want to set up alerts for events that need your immediate attention, right? So your reports are essentially stuff that you can review on a daily basis to check, but you also want your SIEM solution to give you alerts for threats to your data security, right? So you have a whole bunch of events that you want to set up alerts for. Take group membership changes on your Active Directory, right? So if you look at your Active Directory, someone is added to your privileged group, like your administrator group, you need an alert for such changes, right? So other permission changes. If a file that stores personal data, someone goes and changes the permissions on the file, you need an alert for that, right? Failed access attempts, repeated failed access attempts, you need alerts for that. In addition to this, you also want to leverage your SIEM solutions correlation engine to detect attacks such as SQL injection, installation of suspicious software that could attempt data exfiltration, ransomware infections, right? Again, a huge problem. So all of these things are important because of Article 33, right? Because Article 33 expects you to report security incidents that are personal data breaches. So you need to have alerting mechanisms set up in your environment so that you are able to detect indicators of compromise that could lead to a potential personal data breach, right? So these, I've identified some of these events right here to tell you what kind of events you want to be tracking, right? So security group membership changes, you want alerts when people get added to the domain admin group, permission changes, failed access attempts. Say you have 20 failed access attempts to a file by the same user or process, then you know that that person is trying to access something that they should not, right? So you have to set up alerts for these kinds of, for this kind of criteria, right? So here, if you have a SIM solution in place, make sure you go ahead and configure alerts for this, right? Because in addition to reviewing security events on a daily basis, if you really want to meet the requirements of Article 33, you need to have alerts set up for potential data breaches, right? So for possible breach attempts, you need to get real-time notifications. Right? So I just want to show an example of this, right? I'm just going to jump back into the product. Just going to jump back into the product to show you what I mean by alerting and exactly why that's important. And so just jumping back to Event Log Analyzer, just going to jump to the correlation module. Right, so I've just jumped to the correlation module and I have some simulated data right here. If I just, you can see there's a lot of threats that you want to be tracking, like suspicious file accesses, right? So I'm sorry about that. I think I just lost audio for a moment. So what I was trying to say was you want to be tracking advanced attack patterns in addition to just single attack attempts, right? So you have things like suspicious file accesses, file removals, multiple file permission changes, and all of these things. And essentially what you're able to get with a SIM solution is that you're able to track these kinds of suspicious patterns, right? You're getting alerts for suspicious events such as these. Because if you just on a daily basis, you get a report for all the file permissions changed. Great, you go ahead, review that, check it, and you're good to go. But in case something suspicious happens, something anomalous happens, such as multiple file permission changes happening within a short period of time, you then want to get this as a real-time notification. So SIM solution essentially will have this built-in correlation engine which will be able to give you alerts for things like this, right? This is automated and it's able to give you the alert that, hey, something suspicious has happened. Rather than waiting for tomorrow's daily security report, go ahead and investigate the incident immediately, right? So I'll just give you an example. We have an example for, say, suspicious service being installed, right? So I'm just going to look at an alert that the product has triggered to illustrate what I mean by event correlation, right? So you can see here a bunch of events has happened between 1748 and 1751, right? So you can see a Windows account fails to log on, it's all being tracked. Then a Windows account successfully logs on, installs the service and starts the service. And so what if something like this happened on one of your critical Windows servers that is dealing with personal data? Right? So between 1748 and 1751, in about 3.5 minutes, a whole bunch of things has happened on your Windows server and a service has been started. This is critical, right? So what a product like ours can do is give you a real-time notification that this kind of suspicious service has been installed and started on your server and tells you to go ahead and investigate the incident. Right? So you get the entire timeline of exactly what the product has tracked, and you go ahead and investigate and get details. You go ahead and see the name of the service and things like that, right? So in essence, what you're able to do here is you're able to get details about attacks in real time, right? You're able to get notifications about attacks in real time. And in fact, we've been getting questions, and we have one of our users, Rostom, wants to know, what do open source log management or SIEM solutions such as ELK or Greylog lack when it comes to solutions like Log360, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and talk about other vendors and talk about different feature comparisons, right? Because if you'd like more details on that, you can reach out to us via support email. But what I want to tell you here, and it's so crucial since we're discussing correlation, is that SIEM solutions like Log360 or by other vendors come with pre-built correlation, right? So if you look at a tool, a lot of the open source tools that are out there, they are probably going to give you functionality to collect data, process data, search through data, and trigger alerts, right? But you have to know what kinds of criteria that you need alerts for. What solutions like Log360 can do is that we give a lot of pre-built support, right? So what you saw right here for suspicious software being installed, this is something that the product's intelligence can track and trigger the alert automatically, right? So if you were using open source, you would have to come up with a whole bunch of patterns and be very comprehensive in listing those patterns so that the open source tool can track these things. But what a lot of vendors can do for you is they can give you security intelligence built into the product, give you these reports. So if you want a report for file access, you don't have to go and define criteria for it. It's available out of the box in the product, right? So Log360 can give you these kinds of alerts for those file accesses, file modifications, files being copied, DML, DDL changes. In addition to that, it's able to give you these kinds of correlation rules, which are pre-built, right? So once you launch the product, it's already going to be tracking all of these things without additional configurations. The additional configurations comes into the picture when you have specific environment requirements that you want to satisfy, right? So not to deviate too much from the topic, but I thought it was a good point to answer this particular question for the benefit of the entire audience, since we were talking about correlation, right? So you want to have a tool that's able to track these kinds of attack patterns that could jeopardize your data security program, right? So you want to have alerts for these. Another, just want to touch upon one small area that gets often overlooked when it comes to alerts, which is the user behavior anomalies, right? So just like we're tracking a lot of suspicious activities in terms of reports and correlation rules, you also want to be tracking specific user behaviors, right? And for this, again, there is this really cool technology called user behavior analytics, right? UBA, if some of you have heard of it. And this has become very popular in SIEM solutions when it comes to data security, right? Because what UBA can do is basically profile user behavior of all the users in your organization. It can study this using unsupervised machine learning, and then if they perform something anomalous, it's able to trigger alerts, right? And it's able to assess the risk of a particular user. So for example, if some user for the first time out of the blue connects remotely to a file server and copies data, that is pretty unusual. And the SIEM solution is actually able to detect that using the UBA component, right? So Log360 has that as well. So what essentially you're able to do is you're able to detect a lot of threats to your data integrity unsupervised by using advanced techniques like machine learning, right? So for example, if a user normally logs on to a system between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., but suddenly logs in one day at 11 p.m. in the night and then starts to access a file server remotely, the UBA component is able to detect that, right? So this is very important because we have to look beyond basic alerting criteria in order to achieve this kind of with the advanced threats that we have today. We want to achieve this high level of data protection, right? So you need these kinds of advanced technologies really to ensure seemingly simple requirements like data integrity and confidentiality, right? So this is about setting up alerts, right? So I'm just coming to the last bit of the presentation, right? So this is We'll just be wrapping up in another 5 to 6 minutes, after which we will answer any of your pending questions. So we're already in process. Mahidhar and Sharda are answering the questions in near real time. But in case your question doesn't get answered immediately, just bear with us for another 5 to 6 minutes, because I'll also join in with the answering of the questions. Right. So this is just the last bit of the presentation, and this is very important to know, especially with the requirements of Article 33, right? So which deals with the data breach, and the GDPR defines a data breach as a breach of security leading to the destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure, or access to personal data, right? So data breach, remember, is not just the classical example of someone coming and stealing data. Destruction is a problem. If someone goes and deletes personal data and that's unchecked, that's also a data breach. Remember that, right? Alteration itself is a data breach. So for example, if someone goes and alters personal data records, that constitutes a data breach as per GDPR lingo, right? So unauthorized disclosure and access, I guess, are more straightforward in terms of what would constitute a classical data breach. So essentially, the reason I have this fact, 68% of breaches took months or longer to discover, and that's from the Verizon's 2018 data breaches investigations report. This shows the problem that security teams are going to now have with the advent of the GDPR. Because remember, what was the deadline of reporting breaches to the authorities? 72 hours. Right? So you cannot have a case where it takes months to discover a data breach and then you report it. You need to be reporting the data breaches within 72 hours of you discovering it. Right? So this is just to say that it's very important to have these kinds of advanced mechanisms such as alerting and UBA and things like that in place, so that you are in a position to quickly detect data breaches, right? So in case you have to report it, you're still doing that within the deadline, right? So as promised, here's what you have to do in case you are breached. You basically have to file an incident report with important details for your auditors, right? So you can't just report breaches that, hey, breach happened yesterday, right? You have to give them important details. What was the nature of the breach? What kind of a breach was it? Like, for example, even something like ransomware, right? So impact of the breach, like how many data subjects were affected, not the data servers, but the number of subjects, right? So if you have data of, if 1,000 personal records were compromised, then 1,000 data subjects have been affected. So you have to clearly give these details as well. You need to really tell the authorities who was affected and what are the possible consequences of this, right? So if someone's social security number, address, and things like that have been compromised, that is a sort of risk associated to the safety of the individual, right? So you have to analyze and give these consequences. You have to talk about the measures that have been adopted to preempt the breach, as well as to ensure damage control, and you have to, of course, give your contact details. Right? So essentially, a breach report should tell the authorities exactly what happened in the breach, exactly what kind of measures you had in place, and despite which the breach happened. You have to talk about what measures you have taken in order to curb the damage caused by the breach. And only if you're able to give all of these details in your incident report will you not be fined. Right? So if you're not able to, if they find that you were negligent, there's a good chance they'll fine you. Right? If they find that you were negligent and you didn't have measures in place and that's why the breach happened, then you're liable for the big GDPR fine. Right? So this is important to remember. In worst case scenario, if you have a data breach, what you need to do. So remember what a data breach is in the first place, right? The definition of a data breach as to what constitutes a data breach. And in case any of that, if that happens in your organization, you have to file the incident report. Right? So again, you can leverage your SIEM solution to conduct a forensic investigation and search through all the network logs and the audit trail that you've collected and find out crucial details that is needed for the incident report. Right? So you'll be able to find out what kind of accesses were done, what data was copied or modified, and things like that. And that's exactly what you need to be putting inside your incident report. Right? So this is worst case scenario. A SIEM solution is still able to help you with your GDPR compliance. So in conclusion, right, in conclusion, Articles 32 and 33 are dealing with ensuring data integrity and data confidentiality. And Article 33, of course, is the notification of a personal data breach. So in order to achieve these two requirements, you have to deploy measures to detect and report breaches, right? So this is essentially what a SIEM solution is going to do for you, right? It's going to help you with Articles 32 and 33 by helping you monitor security events in real time, run those daily reports needed to review activity, set up alerts to detect threats in real time so that you're able to preempt breaches or quickly go and respond to the breach. And you can also streamline the entire process of incident management by integrating your SIEM solution with a ticketing tool so that you have basically an accountable process by you're resolving a particular security incident. Right. So this brings me to the end of the presentation. We've been answering your questions. If you have any unanswered questions, they would be answered in the next 1 minute to 90 seconds tops. Right. So keep those questions coming though. We keep answering them. I hope this session was informative in giving you some ideas on how you can approach the requirements of Articles 32 and 33. In case you have any more questions about ManageEngine Log360, you can ask it on the live chat or connect with us via support. So you can just visit Log360's website and connect with us on the on via email, or you can connect with our support team, right? So thank you so much for joining us for today's session. I really hope that the session was useful. So do take a moment to fill up the feedback form to let us know what you thought about the session. It's just going to take you 15 to 20 seconds to do that. And also let us know what kinds of topics you'd like to see in the future, right? In our future webinars on GDPR or any other topic, right? So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.